So now over in Nuke we can import our passes, and let's start with the main volumes. I will press R and select this main volume render. And let's deselect this node and make sure that nothing is selected, and I will press S for my project settings, and I will say frame range from 1 to 200, so this will match our render. Full size format, this should be set to HD 1080p. FPS 24, and for my color this is going to be using OCIO, and the config will point to ACES 1.2, so this will now match our Houdini configuration for ACES. And so here is my main render with all of the passes, so if I press page down we should have everything here. Let's actually just go ahead and start splitting this up. So I will drop down a shuffle node from this, place this below. And there's a trick you can do here with identifying which passes you separate. If you go to your node in this shuffle node, I can set the label to be open bracket, and I will type value space in 1 and close bracket. And now this will give me the name of the channel that we shuffle out. So in our shuffle now, if I were to choose key 1 all, now we also have the name showing over here, so this will be a lot easier to identify what kind of channels we're operating on. So I will hold down Control and create a new dot, and I'll grab these both and press Alt-C to duplicate this and link this over here. So this can be the other light, so rim, which is this one, and I can merge these together, so press M and just merge these, hold down Control and click to add a new dot, and I'll go to this merge here and make sure that this is a plus operation. So for now let's only work on these two passes, and let's maybe select another frame here, and I will have this key light act more as a sort of fill color, and I want this rim light to become sort of a highlight color. So for this key light, let's select another frame, maybe this, and I will press G to drop down a grade, and I want to increase the gamma slightly and maybe reduce the overall gain. So I'll just increase the gamma a little bit. I'm trying to make this light maybe be a little bit flatter, so I want to remove a little bit of the contrast, so to turn this into more of a fill light. And for my rim light, I'll drop down a grade node, and I'll try to do the reverse here, so I will decrease the gamma and I will increase the gain. So turn this into more of a sharp highlight. Okay, so if I preview these, this should work, and we can see that there are some very harsh dark spots in our render, and we can actually bring out that CD pass that we talked about. So I will just select one of these shuffles and press Alt-C to duplicate, link this over, and I want to shuffle out this CD pass that we created, so this one over here. And if I drop down a grade from this, we can see that as I decrease the gain, actually we can see that if I hover over some of these pixels here, we can see that, so if I were to Control Shift and sample this region, we can see that we are working with a very high value of 6. So if I were to drop down the gain, we can see that we get a pass that's sort of workable. And we can also use this to fill in these very dark spots in our render. We can also see that we end up with these very harsh bright spots, and we can drop down a median here. So if I drop down a median, you can see that this kind of blurs the whole thing down. It's not really a blur, it's more of an averaging of the values of the pixels. So we still retain some sharpness, but we get rid of all of these very harsh, ugly white spots. And for this median size, I can set this to 1, and we can see that we get some of the sharpness, so it's not necessarily blurring the whole thing, but we do get rid of these nasty pixels. And for this pass, I also want to make sure that we have the same alpha contour that our others have. So we can see maybe that the edges of this pass are a little bit too sharp. So if I were to compare with one of these other passes, we can see that this has a sharp edge. So I want to copy the alpha from our main beauty. So with K, we can drop down a copy node, and I want to copy the alpha, so A will be this and B will be this, So now if I preview the alpha, we have the correct alpha, and we can pre-mold this. So drop down a pre-multiply, and we will get rid of that harsh edge. So with pre-multiply, we soften the edge, and we can add this to our other light. So I'll drop down a merge from here and link this up here. And at the moment this is still way too bright, so maybe just make some room here, and from the pre-mold I'll drop down a grade and just drop the overall gain. And let's make sure that this is set to plus. So our second merge, set this to plus. Okay, and just make some, maybe adjust this a bit and make some room. So let's see, if I were to disable this, we can see that we maintain our overall lighting information, but we also fill in these very dark spots. So I don't really want anything to be 100% black in our render. I want to have detail over the whole thing. We can go to our final grade node, and maybe we can even bring this down even more, and maybe increase the gamma, so flatten this out a bit. Okay, so I think this really helps, and maybe we can even preview some other frames. Let's see, for this, for example, if I didn't have this CD layer, we have some very dark spots, and this just brings a lot more of that detail back. And we can maybe even increase this a little bit. Oh no, let's preview this. Okay, great. So from here I can drop down a color correct, so I'll press C. And I wanted the darkest spots in our render to have a sort of blue tint to it. Let's go to ranges here, and let's go to the shadow, and let's go to test and try to isolate these dark values. And if I increase this, maybe the default settings was pretty good, but maybe I will just increase the shadows a little bit. Okay, so get rid of the test and go to color correct, and if I go to shadows, I can set the gamma value, and let's go to our color wheel, and I'll just increase the blue value and maybe decrease the green. Maybe increase this more, and maybe I can even go back to the ranges, and let's maybe not have this shadow be too strong, so maybe I'll drop this down back, and we can see that if I bring this down back, now our shadows are isolating a smaller region from the render. Go back to color correct and maybe increase the blue gamma, and also go to my gain and increase the overall blue effect for the whole thing. Okay, so now I can go back to my original key light, and maybe the gamma was a little too strong for this, so let's maybe just adjust some of these values. Let's look at our rim and also our CD. Go back to the color correct, and maybe I can go to the master and grab the gain here and just add a little bit of blue over the whole thing. Okay, so now the whole render has this bluish tint, but it will be more blue in the shadows. So just slightly adjust some of these values. Okay, so this will be good for now. I don't really want to spend too much time tweaking these colors, because we still have to add a lot more layers, and then we can come back and readjust some of these values. Let's go ahead first and maybe combine our emission pass into this. And I'll just go to my key light first and maybe adjust this gray just a little bit. So maybe this was a mistake, just making this flat. I want a bit more contrast in our main light. Okay, this should be fine. Let's grab another shuffle node and Control C and Control V, paste this here, plug this in our main stream, and let this be the emission. So direct emission, and let's move this over here, and I will plug this in our stream, and maybe just make this stream go down on this central line over here. So I'll drop down a merge from our color correction that we created earlier, place this here and merge it over here, and let me just maybe organize this a little bit. Okay, and this should be set to plus. and I want this just as my personal preference. I want the last node that I add to be the A over B, so I'll just reverse the order here if I press Shift X. So now this is A over B, and if I disable this layer, we can see that we can see exactly the layer that we place on top. Okay, and we can go to our emission now and add a grade node. Maybe for now I'll just drop down the gain. Alright, and let's also denoise all of these channels separately, so make some room here, and I'll drop down a denoise node, and let's start with this key light, so our first channel. And with this denoise node, I will increase the sampling area and move it over on our skull. And I think this could be anywhere, it doesn't really matter as long as it's sampling a part of your render. Increase the denoise amount maybe to 1.5. And we want to use this temporal processing option, which you can see it's disabled by default. So we need to generate a motion vector from our beauty pass. So over here, I will drop down a motion, or rather a vector generator, and place this as our source, so the beauty pass, and I'll leave this over here, and we can make our motion channel for the denoise point to our vector generator. Now in our denoise we can see that we can enable temporal processing, and I will set this to enable. And if I were to preview this, just this denoise node, let's maybe turn this on and off, and as I increase this frame blending value, we should start to see our render get more and more smooth. Okay, so if I disable this, we can see the result. So this will help to get rid a little bit of this grainy noise generated by our volume rasterized attributes. And maybe actually this should be before our grade node, so let's maybe readjust the order here, plug this back to our motion. Okay, so I want to do the same thing for our rim light. And I can preview this. Alright, and maybe we can also do this for our CD. So let's maybe see where we can place this. Maybe we can place this after our pre-mold. So before our grade, Control C and paste this here. And point our motion here. Okay, so this also helps just smooth things out a little bit. Alright, and we will also do this for our emission. So grab another one of these, place this before our grade in emission. Motion will go to vector generator, and let's see the result. Okay, so this will be fine for now. Let's go back and we can move on.